I caught my daughter with her father-in-law. When I opened that door, I froze. His hand was on her arm. She looked terrified. I thought I'd just walked in on the worst kind of betrayal. But what she was hiding was far more disturbing. If you can't stand people who use others and call it family, hit subscribe. Because what I found out next still makes my skin crawl. I never imagined that the quiet man who smiled politely across dinner tables would one day become the reason my family almost fell apart. Harold had always been distant, my son-in-law's father, a man of few words, sharp eyes, and an air of someone who never forgot a debt. We weren't close, but we were cordial, enough to exchange gifts at Christmas and awkward hugs at birthdays. So when I first noticed Lydia leaving the house more often, I didn't think much of it. She said she was visiting a friend, preparing for a job interview, sometimes even volunteering at the shelter. She's my daughter, kind, thoughtful, the sort who worries about everyone but herself. But mothers notice things, the smallest things. Her smiles started to fade too quickly. Her phone was always turned face down. And every time I mentioned Daniel, her husband, her mood changed. It was like she was carrying a secret too heavy to hold. At first, I thought maybe her marriage was in trouble. Daniel had been busy with work, often traveling, leaving her home alone. I thought she was lonely, maybe seeking comfort in someone who listened. But what I found out wasn't comfort, it was control. One afternoon, I went to Harold's house to drop off some documents for Daniel. He wasn't expecting me, but when I pulled up the driveway, I saw Lydia's car parked outside. My first thought was innocent. Maybe she came to help with something. Harold was elderly, after all. I knocked on the door. No answer. Then I heard voices from the back porch. Low, tense voices. I walked quietly around the side, and there they were. Lydia and Harold, sitting close. Too close. He wasn't yelling, but his voice had weight, like a warning. You owe me, Lydia. Don't pretend you don't remember. She looked pale. I told you I'd help, she whispered. But this isn't what we agreed on. He leaned forward. You wouldn't even be alive if it weren't for me. She looked down at her hands. I know. That's when I froze. Alive? What did that mean? I stepped back quietly, heart pounding. Something in that exchange didn't sound romantic. It sounded dark. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words. You owe me. Alive. The next morning, I decided to ask Lydia about it gently. Sweetheart, I said over breakfast, you've been seeing Harold a lot lately. Everything okay? Her spoon froze midair. Yeah, Mom. He's been helping with something. Something like what? I asked. Just things, she said. Family things. Her tone was clipped, almost defensive. So I didn't push. But I watched her more closely after that. And then the calls started. She'd step outside to take them. She'd whisper. And every time she came back inside, she looked smaller. A week later, I followed her again. I shouldn't have. But something in me wouldn't rest until I knew. She went back to Harold's house. This time they were inside. The curtains were drawn. Through the small gap between them, I saw Harold hand her an envelope. She hesitated, then took it. He said something I couldn't hear, and then she nodded and walked out. When she passed me on the road, she didn't even see me. Her face looked hollow. That night, I found the courage to ask again. Lydia, I said softly, what does Harold want from you? She froze. Then she whispered, he's just reminding me of something. What kind of reminder? She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said something that chilled me. Mom, remember when I was 17? when that accident happened. My heart sank, I remembered. The night she almost died. The night her car flipped near the bridge. What about it? I asked. She swallowed hard. Harold was the one who pulled me out. I blinked. What, Harold? How? I never told you because he asked me not to. He said if I told anyone, it would complicate things. But he saved me, Mom. I owe him everything. I stared at her. That was years ago, Lydia. You don't owe anyone your life. She smiled weakly. That's easy to say when it's not your life someone saved. Then she stood up and walked away. That night, I went to Harold's house again, alone. He opened the door slowly, as if he'd been expecting me. Clara, he said with that calm, unreadable face. I wondered when you'd show up. You need to stop this, I said. Whatever you're holding over her, let it go. He smiled faintly. She told you, didn't she, about the accident? Yes, and I'm grateful you helped her. But that doesn't mean you can own her life now. Own her? He chuckled softly. That's dramatic. Then what do you call this? I said. The meetings, the secrecy. He stepped closer. His eyes were pulled. Repayment, that's all. A debt of gratitude. Debt? I whispered. She was a child. He nodded slowly. And now she's an adult. Old enough to understand that saving a life sometimes comes with responsibility. Responsibility? He smiled. She agreed, Clara, voluntarily. Don't make it sound ugly. It is ugly, I said, trembling, and you know it. He tilted his head. You really should talk to your daughter before accusing people of things you don't understand. Then he shut the door. That night, I sat in the dark and cried, because he was right about one thing. I didn't understand. Not yet. But I was going to. If you've ever seen someone twist gratitude into control, you know how cruel it can be. People like Harold use kindness as a leash. They pretend they're owed something, when in truth, they're just feeding their own power. If you believe no one should ever be trapped by a debt they never asked for, hit the subscribe button. Because manipulators like Harold thrive when people stay silent. And silence ends right here. The next morning, Lydia didn't come home. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Daniel called me in a panic. Said she told him she was going to see Harold again. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a war. Daniel's voice was trembling on the phone. She didn't come home last night, Clara. I called her friends, checked the shelter, nothing. Did you check Harold's place? I asked. There was a pause. I did. His car's gone and the house is locked. Something inside me sank. Daniel, I said quietly, come to my house. Now. He arrived half an hour later, pale and disoriented. He looked like he hadn't slept. I don't understand, he said, pacing the living room. Dad barely talks to anyone, and now Lydia, she's with him every other day. What's going on between them? I hesitated. I think she feels indebted to him for saving her. Saving her? He frowned. I told him everything. The accident, the debt, the meetings. By the time I finished, his expression had changed from confusion to disgust. That old man, he whispered. He's using her. I thought so too, I said. But now, I'm not sure who's using who. That afternoon, I went to Harold's estate again. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air felt heavy, like the walls were holding their breath. I followed the faint sound of voices to his study. Through the half-open door, I saw Lydia sitting across from Harold at his desk. Papers between them. He was showing her something. Documents, maybe legal papers. She was calm, focused. Signing something. When she finished, he smiled. Good, you're learning to follow instructions. But she didn't smile back. She looked him straight in the eye and said, I don't follow. I plan. His face twitched, just slightly. Then he laughed. That's my girl. I stepped back quickly before they could see me, my heart hammering. Whatever was happening between them, it wasn't black and white anymore. It was something worse. That night, Daniel confronted his father. I wasn't there, but he told me later what happened. He went to Harold's house, furious, demanding answers. Harold sat calmly, sipping tea like it was just another Tuesday. Dad, what the hell are you doing with Lydia? Daniel shouted. Harold set down his cup. She came to me. I didn't go to her. You expect me to believe that? Believe what you like, but she's been helping me organize the family trust. You've neglected it for years. Daniel clenched his fists. And you think she can fix that? Harold smiled faintly. She already has. The next morning, Lydia showed up at my house. She looked tired but composed. Why didn't you answer my calls? I asked. I needed time, she said, to think. To think about what? About him? She sat down, folded her hands on the table. Mom, you always taught me to repay kindness, to never forget when someone helps you. This isn't kindness, Lydia, it's control. Maybe it started that way, she said softly, but now it's different. Different how? She looked me straight in the eye. I'm not paying him back anymore. I'm taking back what he owes us. Those words chilled me. What he owes us? She nodded. Daniel's been kept out of the family trust for years. Harold controls everything. The properties, the funds, even Daniel's company shares. AP, you think that's fair? I shook my head slowly. So this is revenge? No, I said firmly. This isn't justice, Lydia. It's corruption. Mom, she whispered, sometimes you have to become part of the system to destroy it. For the first time in my life, I didn't recognize my daughter. Her calm scared me more than her anger ever could. She stood up, straightened her coat, and said quietly, I'm close to fixing everything. You'll see. Then she left. 2 days later, Harold called me. His voice was shaky, the first time I'd ever heard him sound that way. Clara, he said, I think we need to talk about your daughter. My stomach dropped. What about her? She's gone too far. What do you mean? She's been accessing accounts she shouldn't have, changing documents, threatening to expose things that don't concern her. Expose what? He paused. My business affairs, some old transactions. You mean illegal ones? I said. He was silent. Then he sighed. She's blackmailing me, Clara. Using what I told her in confidence. I froze. You told her? Yes, she said she wanted to help. But she's clever. Too clever. Now she's turned it all against me. For a long moment, I didn't speak, because deep down, I wasn't sure if I should feel afraid or proud. Lydia had been the quiet one her whole life, gentle, thoughtful. But now she sounded like someone who'd studied her enemy and learned his playbook. That night, I found her sitting in her car outside my house. I walked up and tapped on the window. She rolled it down, eyes tired but sharp. Why are you doing this, Lydia? I asked. Doing what? Turning into him. She laughed softly. I'm not turning into him, Mom. I'm ending him. You're blackmailing him, she shrugged. Call it what you want. I'm just making sure Daniel and I get what we deserve. Dad took everything from him. I'm taking it back. By lying, by manipulating. She looked at me, expressionless. If you've ever watched someone become what they once hated, you know how dangerous that transformation is. Power doesn't just corrupt the powerful. It infects the desperate. If you believe no one should use pain as an excuse to control others, hit the like button right now. Because silence is what lets manipulators win, and we're not staying silent anymore. She started the car and drove off without another word. And as her taillights disappeared into the night, I realized something terrifying. Lydia wasn't being dragged into Harold's world. She was taking it over. And I wasn't sure if I wanted her to stop. The days that followed were a blur of silence and half-truths. Daniel stopped coming around as much. He said work was overwhelming, but I could see it in his face. He didn't trust his own wife anymore. And Lydia, she barely spoke to either of us. But sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Not guilt, not fear, satisfaction. One evening, Daniel called me. His voice was hollow. "She's transferred several properties into Harold's secondary company," he said, "under her own authorization." "What does that mean?" "It means she has control of assets worth millions. I don't even know how she got access." "She must have gotten Harold's signature," I said quietly. He sighed. "Then she's got him wrapped around her finger." That night, I went to Harold's house again. I had to see for myself. The door was slightly ajar. I stepped inside, calling his name. The house was dark, except for a light in the study. Harold was sitting there, staring at an open safe. Papers and folders were scattered across the floor. He didn't look up. "She's good," he muttered. "What did she do?" He laughed bitterly. "She played me. Said she wanted to protect me. Said she'd destroy the evidence if I gave her control of the trust. I signed everything over. Thought she'd file it away safely." I swallowed. "And?" He looked up at me, eyes red with anger. "She's gone, Clara. With everything." My heart dropped. Gone where? He slammed the drawer shut. "If I knew, I wouldn't be sitting here." I stepped closer. "You forced her into this. You turned her into someone she's not." He glared at me. "Don't you dare blame me for your daughter's greed." "She learned manipulation from you," I said. "You just didn't expect her to use it better than you." His jaw tightened. "Then maybe she deserves what's coming." I left his house trembling. The night air felt cold against my face, but my mind was burning. Because for the first time, I didn't know who the villain was anymore. 2 days later, Lydia showed up at my door. She looked exhausted, eyes dark, hands shaking slightly. "Mom," she said quietly, "I did it." I stared at her. "What did you do?" "I transferred everything. Every property, every account, every asset Harold had hidden. It's all under my name now." "Why, Lydia?" She smiled faintly. "Because justice doesn't come to people like us unless we take it." "Justice?" I said. "Or vengeance?" She looked down. "Does it matter?" "Yes," I said firmly, "because one frees you, the other destroys you." She sighed. "You always want the clean version, Mom. But the truth is dirty. Harold's been hiding money for years. Unreported investments. Stolen shares. I've seen the proof. I just made sure it's all exposed." I blinked. "Exposed to who?" She looked up, her expression flat. "To the authorities." That night, news broke. A corporate scandal involving Harold's company. Hidden assets. Forged records. Harold's name was everywhere. Daniel called me in shock. "Lydia did this?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know whether to be proud or terrified. The next morning, Harold's house was surrounded by reporters. I stood across the street, watching him being escorted into a police car. He saw me. For a second, I thought he might shout something, but he just smiled, a tired, bitter smile, and nodded once. like he finally understood what it felt like to lose control. That evening, Lydia came over. She looked calm. Too calm. "It's done," she said. "And what now?" I asked. "I'll return everything once Daniel gets his rightful share." I didn't do this for me. I wanted to believe her. But something in her voice didn't sound like redemption. It sounded like victory. Later that night, I found her sitting in my backyard, staring at the dark sky. "You've changed," I said softly. She smiled without turning. "I just stopped pretending to be weak." "That's not strength, Lydia. That's revenge dressed as courage." She looked at me then, eyes cold. "You still don't get it, do you? People like Harold win because everyone else plays nice." I stopped playing. Her words sank into me, like stones. The next morning, Daniel left her. He packed his things, said he couldn't trust her anymore. He didn't yell, didn't cry, just said, quietly, "You've become what you hate." Lydia didn't stop him. She just stood there, watching him go. When he was gone, she looked at me and said, "Maybe that's the price of getting justice." That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Harold was in custody. Daniel had left. And Lydia had everything she thought she wanted. But the house felt colder, and the silence between us grew like something alive. The next week, a letter arrived, from Harold, written from prison. It was short. "Clara, tell Lydia congratulations. She won. But remind her, the throne she took was built on rot, and rot always spreads." I read it 3 times, my hands trembling. When I showed it to Lydia, she only said, "He's right about one thing." I won. Then she turned and walked away. That's when I realized it wasn't just Harold who had been playing a game. It was Lydia, all along. From the moment she said she owed him, she'd been planning this. Every meeting, every word, every tear. She'd used his greed to destroy him. And in doing so, she'd become the kind of person who could. It had been 2 months since Harold's arrest. 2 months since Daniel left. 2 months since Lydia stopped answering my calls. Her number still worked, but she never picked up. Her house was quiet, blinds always drawn. Then one morning, a brown envelope slid under my door. No name, no address. Just a key taped to the front. I knew it was from her. That evening, I drove to her house. The driveway was empty. The air smelled like dust and loneliness. Inside, the lights were off. Only the hum of the refrigerator broke the silence. I called out softly, "Lydia." No answer. I walked through the house, each step echoing, until I reached her study. On the desk were stacks of documents. Bank statements, property transfers, legal letters. And right on top, a note. It said, "Mom, don't worry, I'm fine. But sometimes, when you fight monsters too long, you stop recognizing yourself." I thought I was fixing everything. Instead, I ruined it all. My chest tightened as I read the rest. I didn't want to become him, but I did. Maybe I should start over, away from all of this. The last line made my breath catch. "Don't look for me. I'm finally free." I dropped the paper, ran through the house calling her name. Bedroom empty, bathroom empty, closet empty. She was gone. I sank to the floor, holding the letter to my chest. And for the first time since it all began, I let myself cry. Because I realized she didn't vanish out of guilt. She vanished out of exhaustion. The kind that comes when you've won the war but lost the reason you fought. Weeks passed. Harold's case made headlines. His empire crumbled. Daniel started over somewhere quiet. And me? I stayed in the same house, watering the same plants, waiting for a phone call that never came. Until one afternoon, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? A pause. Then, Mom? Her voice soft, tired, but calm. I'm okay. Where are you? I can't say. Not yet. I just needed you to know that. I'm not angry anymore. I swallowed hard. Lydia, come home. I will, she said, but not as the same person. I need to find who I was before Harold, before all of this. Tears rolled down my cheeks. Then find her, sweetheart. I'll be here when you do. There was a long silence. Then she whispered, I love you, Mom. And the line went dead. That was 6 months ago. No one's heard from her since. But sometimes, when I'm watering my plants, I hear a knock on the gate. Soft, familiar. And for a second, I almost believe it's her. Maybe one day it will be. Or maybe the woman who returns will be someone new entirely. Either way, I'll still open the door. Because no matter what she's done, no matter who she's become, she'll always be my daughter.